So the first case that we are going to be looking at today is the case of Valeant, the company with a new pharmaceutical model and different accounting. And the first question that we're going to look at is list the ethical issues that you can see in this case. The first ethical issue that I see in this case is buying influence or engaging in conflicts of interest. Valeant had actually developed a unique way of doing this. They would run their business through specialty pharmacies such as Philidor RX services instead of CVS or Walgreens, mainly because pharmacies like CVS or Walgreens had a plethora of generics that Valeant's drugs would have to compete against, whereas Philidor RX services was specialized expensive drugs, of which many of those drugs did not have consumer base for a generic product to actually be sustained on the market. In the same relationship, we also see another ethical issue being faced, which is taking an unfair advantage. And Philidor did not only process the prescriptions that Valeant filled, but Philidor in this way became almost an extended arm of Valeant. Philidor's main goals as a pharmacy in this relationship was to get insurers to cover the most expensive Valeant drug that they could. They wanted to avoid getting those prescriptions filled with generics. They knew that they would also receive a discount from all Valeant drugs, as well as a fee for filling the prescription with a Valeant drug. So they had every incentive to go along with this and push the Valeant drugs on people. Another ethical issue that arose was giving or allowing a false impression. When Philidor was seen having aggressive programs for obtaining insurance reimbursement. The next ethical issue that I noticed in the case was the hiding or divulging of information, and that happened in their taxes such as stock-based compensations, legal costs, and as well as the costs of acquisitions and restructuring. And they actually totaled about $15 billion, but Valeant stripped those out. They actually made it look more profitable than it actually was to their investors. And the last ethical issue that I see is the ethical issue of saying things that you know are not true. The SEC investigation of Valeant, where they knew what the allegations were, they knew if they were true or not, and they decided to deny any of the allegations were true. But in February 2016, Valeant actually admitted that they had improperly booked about $58 million in revenue. Question 2 states, what issues did Valeant miss in its decision on accounting prices and its prices of drugs? When we talk about ethics, we're talking about what is right and wrong in situations that the law doesn't necessarily apply to. And in this specific case, I believe that the ethical issue of taking things that don't belong to you was definitely at play. Drug companies can purchase rights to certain drugs. I do believe that when a drug company takes a drug to a price that is now unreachable for people who depend on that drug to survive, you are taking something that doesn't belong to you, because you are taking that person's ability to live. If that person was able to pay the price that it cost before this massive price increase, then I feel as though they earned that right, they have that right, it was already theirs, and this company is now going in and taking that. The next case that we were talking about is the Deflategate and Spygate, the New England Patriots. And the first question that we will be discussing is, what significance do you attach to Tom Brady's answer, "I don't believe I cheated"? The statement was, of course, controversial because at the time, the New England Patriots were being accused of cheating, were being held under a lot of scrutiny in the press. But because the specifics surrounding the accusations of them cheating weren't explicitly banned at that time, Tom Brady is right to think that he did not cheat, because as far as he knew, the things that the Patriots were engaging in were part of that gray area that wasn't yet defined clearly as cheating. The next question is evaluate how the legal issues ended up versus the ethical issues that you see and discuss the issue of proof. So in the Deflategate case, what ended up happening was that Belichick and the Patriots accepted a $1 million fine and the loss of first and fourth round draft picks. Tom Brady received a 4-game suspension because the NFL commissioner found evidence that Brady was at least generally aware of the Patriots employees' deflation of the footballs. What ended up happening, however, was that on behalf of Brady, the NFL Players Association actually went to a federal court judge where he actually tossed out the suspension, and the judge found that because it was not clear in the contract that a penalty such as this 4-game suspension was possible for breaking the rules, Mr. Brady was deprived of due process. So effectively, the ethical issue of this case became whether or not the players were actually aware that they were committing unethical actions and not that they did those actions. The third and final case I will be discussing is damaging reviews on the internet, the reality and the harm. The first question here is, what can you think of as a defense for somebody who posts a review and whose identity is revealed to the business? Another defense tactic that I would utilize would be to bring up other negative reviews that have maybe been made about that business and question as to whether or not complaints or lawsuits were filed against those people to try to find out their identities. Why now? Why this specific review? Can this business truly link the decline in their business or whatever they experienced to this person's comment? And if they can't, then they can't prove that it was defamation. The next question states to discuss the ethics of companies whose business is to write negative reviews for competitors in order to increase business. So this business model to me right away shows a clear violation of 3 ethical issues in particular. Saying things that you know are not true, giving or allowing false impressions, and as well as buying influence or engaging in conflicts of interest. Next, the current events article that I have selected that reminded me about one of the cases is from The Independent, and the article is entitled DiCaprio, Fonda urged U.S. not to sign climate deal with Brazil. This article discusses dozens of celebrities, including actors Leonardo DiCaprio, Jane Fonda, and Joaquin Phoenix, who are all calling on President Joe Biden to refrain from signing any sort of environmental agreement with Brazilian President Jair Bolsonaro. However, what reminded me about specifically the Valiant case with this article was that it discusses how Bolsonaro is now joining foreign leaders at a US-led summit to tackle the climate crisis, which will be held online. And this, to me, reminds me of a potential Valiant and Philidor relationship where Brazil and the US could potentially benefit economically at the cost of losing the Amazon rainforest or having it pillaged. So this potential Biden and Bolsonaro relationship very much appears to be like the corporate relationship that was shared between Valiant and Philidor, where both of them are working together, having an unfair advantage on, clearing out or perpetuating more deforestation in the Amazon, a place that's already reaching a critical tipping point for their own economic benefit.